Welcome to the Buddhistisches Tor Berlin podcast. Join us for live recordings from classes, insightful talks, and guided meditations.
All right, so as I said at the beginning, this is week 2 of a 4-week meditation course on the essence of meditation, and we're taking inspiration, I guess you could say, from this Zen saying, or this saying from the Zen tradition, a special transmission outside scriptures, no dependence on words, direct pointing to the mind, seeing into one's own true nature, realizing Buddhahood. That is our guide, if you like, on this 4-week course. Last week we were looking at the first line, so special transmission outside the scriptures. And for those of you who were not here last week, we were basically talking about the fundamental shift from a state of unawareness into awareness. You could say that the Buddhist path is about making that shift from a state of unawareness or ignorance to a state of awareness. We could call that enlightenment, but let's just keep it with awareness for now, without defining what that is. So that's the shift that we're trying to make. And meditation is part of the process by which we make that kind of shift. And we talked also last week about coming into awareness in terms of coming into relationship to our experience. So what's actually going on for us? When we're not aware of it and we start to become aware, we start to see what's occurring, what does our experience consist in? And we explored that meditatively, and most people reported back, I think everybody reported back actually, experiences that can fit into 3 categories. So one was that we have a sensate experience, so the physical senses that we just explored in the meditation, whether that's sound or sight or tactile sensations. People also talked about images, so memories, but also kind of maps and ideas. So I remember somebody saying their hands or that they were surprised they could experience both of them at the same time because their map was telling them that they were far apart, for example. And then the third layer of experience was thought and kind of storytelling, commentary about our experience. So we bring awareness to the hand, we feel sensations, we have a kind of inner image of what the hand looks like, but then we might start thinking about something we've done with our hands that day, or somebody had an example last week, I can't remember what it was, but they had a good example of how they'd used their hand that day. Maybe we think about how cold they've been in the snow today. So sensations, maps and images and thoughts were the kind of common experiences that people were reporting. So we talked about all of that being fine, like that's all normal human experience. It's not that any of that is wrong or problematic. Sometimes I know when we start to meditate or start to explore meditation, it's easy to think that thinking is wrong or bad because that's not what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be aware of our breath and that's it. But thinking happens, the mind thinks. And we have to kind of allow for that and incorporate that, and to some extent use thinking as a tool in our meditation. So it's all fine, but what I was saying last week was that really sensation is the essential foundation for meditation. Because if we bring awareness to sensation, that tends to deepen awareness. If we bring our awareness to the maps or the thoughts, that can also open up experience and open us into experience. But it also has the tendency to draw us back into unawareness. So probably we've all had that experience. A thought arises in the mind, you decide to follow it, and it leads to another one and another one and another one, and before you know it, you're not in Berlin anymore, you're in some thought world, basically, a kind of disembodied thought world. So if in meditation we keep returning to sensations, particularly kind of tactile sensations, there's a grounding, there's a sense of being grounded, or coming into what I described just in the meditation as a basic presence. So we're coming into a presence. In the Buddhist tradition, call that access concentration. That's the kind of correct term. I think it's a little bit problematic, so I'm preferring basic presence, a sense of presence. I won't go into that, it'll take too long. And that linked to that first line of the Zen saying, so a special transmission outside scriptures. Because the scriptures, if we take symbolically scripture, words, kind of now written down, originally transmitted orally, but now written down, there's a kind of symbol there of fixing. So once we put something into words and write it down, we all know this because we've posted things on the internet, it's there and it can't be taken back. So there can be a fixing of an idea in a particular form and expression. The special transmission outside scripture is the actual dynamic lived experience, the unfixed flow of experience. So if we explore in meditation this sense of presence, that's unfixed. It's constantly moving. We've just tasted that. Whereas something written down symbolically represents something fixed. There was a caveat that the scriptures are really important. We looked at some of the suttas last week about different meditations and how they help us. They're a guide and they open things up. So I'm not critiquing the use of scriptures or words at all. But if we take it as a symbol, sensation is our way into this special transmission, this lived experience. So that was the ground we covered last week. In a way, it's similar ground again. We'll be talking again about lived experience as opposed to something fixed and more concrete. So we'll move on and we look this week at line 2. So a special transmission outside the scriptures, no dependence on words. So no dependence on words. So what can we do with that line? How can that line help us in our exploration of meditation? It's quite embarrassing because in thinking about speaking on no dependence on words, I found there was loads I wanted to say. Like lots of words, lots of things I want to say and communicate. So it's quite ironic really. But let's see if I can keep it brief enough for us to have a break soon and then do some more meditation. But the first thing that came to mind for me in pondering this during the week was a story. So I'm going to tell you the story of Hakuin, the Zen master from the Rinzai tradition, and a part of his life which I think is relevant to this exploration of no dependence on words. So Hakuin was a monk in the Zen tradition, Japanese monk, and he started his spiritual life very young. So I think still as a teenager, but by his 20s he was a monk, ordained as a monk, and he was quite a character in his youth. So he's written his own autobiography, which you can read, and he describes how in his 20s he would just practice really hard, so study the Dharma, meditate a lot. The main practice seemed to be koan practice, where you turn over a phrase, a kind of nonsensical expression over and over in your mind, which leads to kind of breakthroughs into deeper states of consciousness. So probably the culture at the time was like that, but Hakuin seems to have been particularly of that nature. So he describes how hard he practiced, and he had breakthroughs. Then he realized that he still had problems, so he tried even harder, kind of through gritted teeth. He does say somewhere, I've got a few notes here. Well, let me read this. Let me just read from it. So he's just had this big breakthrough, and then he says, as I began reflecting upon my everyday behavior, I could see that the two aspects of my life, the active and the meditative, were totally out of balance. No matter what I was doing, I never felt free or completely at ease. I realized I'd have to rekindle a fearless resolve and once again throw myself, life and limb, together into the Dharma struggle. With my teeth clenched tightly and eyes focused straight ahead, I began devoting myself single-mindedly to my practice, forsaking food and sleep altogether. So that gives you a sense of him. So really pushing it. But then he runs into problems. I'll carry on. He says, before the month was out, my heart fire began to rise upward against the natural course, parching my lungs of their essential fluids. My feet and legs were always ice cold. They felt as though they were immersed in tubs of snow. There was a constant buzzing in my ears, as if I were walking beside a raging mountain torrent. I became abnormally weak and timid, shrinking and fearful in whatever I did. I felt totally drained, physically and mentally exhausted. Strange visions appeared to me during waking and sleeping hours alike. My armpits were always wet with perspiration. My eyes watered constantly. I travelled far and wide, visiting wise Zen teachers, seeking out noted physicians, but none of the remedies they offered brought me any relief. So he slips into this sickness, which is known as Zen sickness. So from the exertion of one's efforts and practice, one can slip into this state that's known as Zen sickness. I'm just going to go on with the story, because this is one of my favourite stories, like I said, in the WhatsApp group. But also I think it does bring out relevant points for us in this exploration tonight. So what he decides to do, he's asking around, nobody can help him. But then he meets somebody who tells him about a hermit who lives in the mountains called Master Hakuin. And Master Hakuin lives in a cave high up somewhere in the mountains, and he was said to be 370 years old. Probably a kind of urban legend, but that's what Hakuin heard and was impressed. So he decides he's going to go off, even though people tell him, you'll never find him, because as soon as he sees you, he just runs away and hides. But Hakuin is desperate, so he goes off in search of him up this mountain. And he tells the story. I won't read all of the story, but he talks about his trip through the mountains, kind of snowy peaks, jagged rocks, the difficulty he had in trying to find Master Hakuin. And then at one point he hears the distant sound of somebody chopping at a tree. So he thinks, maybe that's him. And he quietly approaches. And he sees Master Hakuin disappear. But he follows him, and he thinks he sees the entrance to a cave in the mountains. So he goes over, and sure enough, there is a cave entrance. So he goes in. He enters the cave. Let me read again from Hakuin's description. So he says, I now stood at the entrance to the cave. It commanded a prospect of unsurpassed beauty, completely above the vulgar dust of the world. My heart trembling with fear, my skin prickling with goose flesh, I leaned against some rocks for a while and counted out several hundred breaths. After shaking off the dirt and dust and straightening my robe to make myself presentable, I bowed down, hesitantly pushed the blind aside and peered into the cave. I could make out the figure of Master Hakuin in the darkness. He was sitting perfectly erect, his eyes shut. A wonderful head of black hair, flecked with bits of white, reached down over his knees. He had a fine, youthful complexion, ruddy in hue like a Chinese date. He was seated on a soft mat made of grasses and wore a large jacket of coarsely woven cloth. The interior of the cave was small, not more than 5 feet square, and except for a small desk, there was no sign of household articles or other furnishings of any kind. I introduced myself as politely as I could, explained the symptoms and causes of my illness in some detail, and appealed to the master for help. After a while, Hakuin opened his eyes and gave me a good hard look. Then, speaking slowly and deliberately, he explained that he was only a useless, worn-out old man, more dead than alive. He dwelled among these mountains, living on nuts and wild mountain fruit. He passed the nights together with the mountain deer and other wild creatures. He professed to be completely ignorant of anything else and said he was acutely embarrassed that such an important Buddhist priest had made a long trip expressly to see him. But I persisted, begging repeatedly for his help. At last he reached out with an easy, almost offhand gesture and grasped my hand. He proceeded to examine my 5 bodily organs, taking my pulses at 9 vital points. Furrowing his brow, he said with a voice tinged with compassion, "Not much can be done. You have developed a serious illness. By pushing yourself too hard, you forgot the cardinal rule of religious training. You are suffering from Zen sickness, which is extremely difficult to cure by medical means. You will never regain your health unless you are able to master the techniques of introspective meditation. Just as the old saying goes, when a person falls to the earth, it is from the earth that he must raise himself up." "Please," I said, "teach me the secret technique of introspective meditation. I want to begin practicing it and learn how it's done." With a demeanour that was now solemn and majestic, Master Hakuin softly and quietly replied, "Ah, you are determined to find an answer to your problem, aren't you, young man? All right, I suppose I can tell you a few things about introspective meditation that I learned many years ago. It is a secret method for sustaining life known to very few people. Practiced diligently, it's sure to yield remarkable results. It will enable you to look forward to a long life as well. What you must do is to cut back on words and devote yourself solely to sustaining your primal energy. What you must do is to cut back on words and devote yourself solely to sustaining your primal energy. Hence it is said, those who wish to strengthen their sight keep their eyes closed. Those who wish to strengthen their hearing avoid sounds. Those who wish to sustain their heart energy maintain silence." Okay, so we pause the story there. He goes on to teach him the method of introspective meditation. But I'll just pause there to reflect on a few points from this encounter between Hakuin and Master Hakuin. So I think the essential point was at the end there. So Master Hakuin's, if you like, diagnosis. The problem is words, isn't it? He says to Hakuin, the problem is, or the remedy is that you need to cut back on words. The implication being that there's been too many words. And Hakuin, as we know, had been practicing these koan practices, turning the words over in his mind, thinking, meditating as well, but really grappling with quite difficult, even paradoxical concepts. And that was too much. He's made himself sick. Master Hakuin has identified that as the problem. So cutting back on the words seems to be the answer. So I think we can take that statement about words, cutting back on words, no dependence on words. I don't think we just have to think of words on a page or descriptions and labels for things. So I take that, I don't know how you take that, but I take that as being ideas. As much as words, it's ideas. The problem can be ideas. So Hakuin's a really idealistic young monk. He obviously has a goal and strong ideas about what he's doing and how to do it. And that somehow is out of sync with reality. So what he's trying to do is noble. He wants to know the truth. It's a noble pursuit. Later on he talks about how much he wants to help other people. So again, it's a noble pursuit, but there's something imbalanced in the way he's trying to do it. Trying to kind of manipulate and control his environment. A few people are smiling, so like, does that sound familiar? Yeah, because I can really relate to this. I won't go into my own life story, it's not as exciting as Hakuin's, but I've definitely had moments where I wouldn't say it was Zen sickness, but where I've felt like I've been doing some damage in the way I've been approaching things. And often it's been because I've got a particular idea of what I'm trying to do that isn't in harmony with how things work. So there's a kind of pushing or swimming against the flow of the stream to achieve something, to make something happen. However noble that might be, in my own case it's been a kind of misplaced ambition or kind of a misaligned intention. So perhaps we kind of can recognize that and relate to that. So I take no dependence on words in that kind of way, that we can overly depend on ideas that are not in tune with reality. And when we do that, we either literally get sick, as in Hakuin's case, or we just experience pain, suffering, frustration, and all those kind of emotions that come through in some way being blocked, not able to realize what we're trying to do using the methods that we're trying to do it. So the advice is cut back on words and devote yourself solely to sustaining your primal energy. So I think for myself, when I'm in those kind of thought worlds and pursuing those particular ambitions or having those particular expectations, there's a kind of dispersion of energy because there's the idea and a lot of energy behind that. Then there's the unconscious habits that are pulling me back from that, which are taking energy in another direction. So there's this kind of dispersion of energy or disintegration. I think what Master Hakuin is trying to communicate is that we can integrate those energies. So drawing in, introspective meditation, drawing in to the kind of primal energetic core. I don't think that necessarily means reducing. Integration might be through awareness, just being aware of the disintegration, being aware of the different poles in our nature, in our being. That in itself, I think, can become a reservoir of energy. So that's the teaching, or the initial teaching. What you must do is cut back on words. He then goes on to teach him the method of introspective meditation. And let me give you a flavour. I'm keeping an eye on the time, but it's too good not to give you a flavour. And flavour is an interesting way of expressing it. You'll see why in a moment. So Master Hakuin begins to give him the teaching, and he says, imagine that a lump of soft butter, pure in colour and fragrance, and the size and shape of a duck egg, is suddenly placed on the top of your head. Yeah? So a lump of soft butter. It begins to slowly melt. It imparts an exquisite sensation, moistening and saturating your head within and without. It continues to ooze down, moistening your shoulders, elbows and chest, permeating lungs, diaphragm, liver, stomach and bowels, moving down the spine through the hips, pelvis and buttocks. It goes on and on like this, throughout the whole body, throughout the whole system, suffusing the legs with beneficial warmth, reaching the soles of the feet. So this is the meditation practice, is this butter just oozing throughout one's entire system. So that energy, you are filled with energy. So he says, the student should then repeat the contemplation. Their vital energy flows downward. It gradually fills the lower region of the body, suffusing it with penetrating warmth, making them feel as if they were sitting up to their navel in a hot bath, filled with a decoration of rare and fragrant medicinal herbs that have been gathered and infused by a skilled doctor. And it goes on. It's a kind of lavish description. You can even smell the scent of the pure butter. Exquisite sensations, melting touch, perfect peace and harmony. So this is the method of introspective meditation. We don't teach meditation like that in the Triratna Buddhist community. Well, not explicitly, but I say that, but I think we do have the equivalent practice, basically. So we call it the mindfulness of breathing, which is one of the first practices that we introduce, one of the core practices that we have in the Triratna community. And I think it's the same because the emphasis in the mindfulness of breathing is on sensation. So it's not on the kind of imaginal sensation of butter melting through the system, but it's about breathing. And breathing, as we explored in the meditation not so long ago, is sensate. So when we're mindful of breathing, we're mindful of the sensate experience of the body moving, the breath coming and going, the temperature. It's all sensation, isn't it? It's not an idea. We're not mindful of the idea of breathing. Probably we are, because we stray into maps as much as sensation. But the practice is trying to get us to come into that sensate experience, which I think if we could fully do that would be as exquisite as the description that Hakuin is giving of butter melting through the body. So I think this is our practice of introspective meditation. It's like this. And we're not using words. So in the mindfulness of breathing, the most we do is count, isn't it? So I'll talk about the practice later, but we might add a count, but we're not saying anything. We're not using phrases. There are no words in the practice. So I just want to mention two things to consider, then we'll have a break and then we'll do a period of the mindfulness of breathing. So one important point in terms of how do we do the mindfulness of breathing and what is essential, I think the first thing I want to mention is motivation. So there are many ways you could approach the mindfulness of breathing, but what is our motivation for doing it? Is it that we've got a particular idea, and how sort of accurate or effective is that idea? Our meditation will be effective to the extent that our view about it allows it to be effective. So with the mindfulness of breathing, if our intention is to avoid something, to kind of get away from something, If our intention is to have a big fireworks kind of experience and break through into enlightenment and be like super wise, I'm not saying these are bad things, but I think they're limited. They have a ceiling. They're too... I'm using my hands a lot, so I think I'm trying to say something. They're too up here, let's say, above the head. They might be noble and they might be effective to an extent, but they need balance. Yeah, they need some kind of balance. So can we shift the intention and the motivation towards those sensations? Can we bring our intention down to the ground to match it with our more lofty ideal? Yeah. What's interesting about Master Hakuin is how humble he is. Yeah, he's living in this cave with nothing. There's symbolism there of his humility. So for me the question is, okay, so maybe I depend on words too much. Maybe there are too many ideas. What could I depend on instead? Or even better, what am I dependent on? What am I dependent on? And I'm dependent on the breath. I never think about it like that. But if I were to stop breathing, I wouldn't be here. Like, I actually depend on the breath, not words. I'm dependent moment by moment for my life on breathing. I'm dependent upon the water that I drink in the break. These are the things that we are actually dependent on, but we're often not aware of that. So in the practice, can we become aware of the breath as, if you like, the sustaining life force, the thing that is keeping us alive moment by moment? If we saw the breath like that, I imagine, I'm going to suggest that the mindfulness of breathing would become a more effective practice. So we're mindful of the breath for its sake. We're not mindful of the breath in order to get somewhere else or achieve something. We're aware of the breath, mindful of the breath for its own sake. Reconnecting, coming back into touch with it. So I had a whole other thing to weave in there. I'm just going to pretty much cut that. And all I will say is that if we think about the way we view life, our world view, often the breath is just kind of, it's just there in the background, isn't it, like a machine. The machine is running. And until I am out of breath, I'm not even aware of it. I'm aware that the ancient Greeks, they used to, they didn't see things in terms of a mechanical universe, a material universe. The word they had was cosmos. And cosmos, the root of the word cosmos, is the same as the root of the word cosmetic, like cosmetic, beauty. So they saw the cosmos as beautiful, beautiful in its multiplicity. So the whole of the cosmos was a kind of display of beauty, the beautiful display of life. And obviously the breath is one of those showings, it's one of those displays. So can we come into that? There's an aesthetic quality. The opposite of aesthetic is anesthetic, numbing, being numb to our sensory experience. So can we become aesthetic again? Can we come to our senses, come into the breath as a sensate experience? Okay, and the other thing I wanted to mention, as well as just checking in with our motivation, why do we want to do this practice? The other thing is more practical and to do with, well, how do we do it? Because even if we change the idea, when we sit down, become aware of the breath, we'll still experience distraction and what are known in the Buddhist tradition as hindrances. So we need some kind of practical tool to work with that. I'm going to suggest we look at what we call focus and breadth. So breadth with a D, like breadth in terms of width. Expansiveness, so focus and expansiveness, let's say. Because often the two hindrances that seem to be a problem for most people are restlessness and dullness. So restlessness, too much energy, too much thinking, restlessness in the body, wanting to move, wanting to itch, or dullness, whether that's falling asleep or just feeling flat. I think they're the two things that crop up in people's meditation and hold something back. So we can work with this exploration of focus and breadth, focus and broadness. So if we're feeling restless, maybe we need to broaden out, bring in more breadth. And we can do that. So if I hold up my hand, can everyone see my hand? Yeah. And while you can see my hand, without looking away from it, can you see other parts of my body? And can you see the room behind it? Yeah, so we can do focus and breadth. We can be aware of something specific, but also not losing the background. If I do that again, and you're aware of the room behind the hand, and you can look anywhere, can you still see the hand if you're in this direction? Yeah, so you can have breadth in the forefront and focus in the background. So we can do that in the mindfulness of breathing. We can have the breath in the foreground and focus, if that gives us more energy, or we can have the background in the forefront, if you see what I mean, if we are needing that kind of approach. But I'm going to lead the meditation after the break, and I'll say more about that then and bring that in later. Okay, so there you go. Hakuin was cured. That's the happy ending. And he taught the introspective meditation practice to his own disciples. And it's said that in the Rinzai tradition it's still there. I don't know if that's true and if people are sat meditating with butter melting, but the autobiography has preserved the account, the event. So I hope that has been inspiring for people.